The scent of rain on hot asphalt hit his senses before the cold did. Ethan found himself face down in it, the sharp gravel of the alley biting into his cheek. His body ached with a bone-deep weariness, the ghost of old hunger shivering under his skin. He pushed himself up on trembling arms, spitting out a mouthful of grimy water. The neon sign of the riverfront casino flickered above, a garish pink promise that had long since curdled into a lie. He'd known the risk. Stepping back into that world, the clatter of dice and the static buzz of chance, was an invitation for the past to find him. And it had, in the form of Carter Thorne. The man had been a specter at the high-stakes table, tall and immovable in a suit that cost more than Ethan's entire life. He hadn't said much, just watched with eyes the color of a winter lake, smoke from his cigarette coiling between them like a phantom. Ethan, sweating under the collar of his own cheap shirt, had kept his head down, his jaw set in what he hoped was an alpha's unflappable mask. He was Jason Miller now, broad-shouldered and smelling of bourbon and leather, a far cry from the delicate, gardenia-scented illusion he'd once crafted. He'd touched the hard plane of his stomach through his shirt, a silent reassurance. Carter couldn't possibly recognize him. But then Carter had leaned back, the casino's low light carving shadows under his cheekbones. His voice was a low, unsettling rumble. He mentioned an old friend, someone he'd lost. A wife. Ethan had forced a grin, all teeth and false bravado. He'd heard that line before, he claimed. It was a pathetic attempt at a pickup. Carter hadn't smiled. He'd just studied him through the haze and murmured that the resemblance was uncanny. So much it was almost funny. The casual cruelty of it, the audacity to call a ghost a wife, had sent a jolt of old anger through Ethan's veins. That ghost had been, at best, a convenient companion. A transaction. Carter had never offered a single endearment, only silence or a hand over a mouth to stifle the noise. Later, when Carter's hand had covered his own on the dice, a leather-clad warmth that felt like a brand, the man had leaned close. His breath was a whisper against Ethan's ear, a promise laced with venom. If he ever saw that runaway wife again, he'd have a message for him. A very specific, violent message. Then he was gone, leaving Ethan with a phantom chill and a pile of lost chips. Now, weeks later and drowning in debt, the casino's enforcers were eager to collect. Ethan was back to his oldest trade. The air in the upscale lounge was thick with the cloying sweetness of expensive perfume and aged whiskey. He was on his knees, the cold floor seeping through his jeans. A rich kid named Leo, who favored a cloying rosewater cologne, was tilting a bottle of bourbon against his lips, laughing as the amber liquid spilled over his chin and soaked his shirt. "Come on, Jason. Show me how an alpha drinks," Leo crooned, his eyes bright with a predatory glee. "Swallow it. Every drop." Ethan choked, his throat burning, veins standing out on his neck. He was focusing on the pattern in the expensive rug, trying to divorce his mind from the humiliation, when the room's atmosphere shifted. A hush fell, followed by a ripple of murmured respect. He didn't need to look up. He felt him. Polished leather shoes entered his blurry field of vision and came to a stop inches from his hand. The man settled into the plush chair in front of him, crossing his legs with an audible shift of fine wool. "Having fun?" The voice was calm, familiar, and it sent a jolt of pure ice down Ethan's spine. Leo was immediately fawning, explaining he was just playing a little game with his new pet. The pet's name, he supplied with a giggle, was Jason. "Jason," Carter Thorne repeated, the name a slow, considering drawl. The toe of his shoe nudged under Ethan's chin, forcing his head up. Ethan's gaze traveled up the tailored trouser leg, over the knee, to the hands resting there. Strong, capable hands. A familiar, understated platinum watch. The crisp white shirt strained over a chest he knew was all hard muscle. He didn't need to see the face. The scent of him, that mix of clean linen and something darker, like smoke after the gun has been fired, was enough. Carter's eyes, those cold lakes, met his. "A pet," he said, as if tasting the word. Before Ethan could speak, Leo was upon him again, grabbing his face, forcing the bottle back. "He's a riot, Carter. Watch this." The world narrowed to the choking flood of liquor. Ethan grabbed at the wrist holding the bottle, his fingers scrabbling against Carter's sleeve. Carter didn't move. He just watched, a detached curiosity in his gaze. He said if any spilled, he'd make sure it was poured right back in. His voice held a quiet, unquestionable authority. The bottle was suddenly plucked away by a slender, elegant hand. "Carter, for heaven's sake. Let him go. Oliver." Carter's Oliver. The one who'd left him at the altar 5 years ago, splashing the scandal across every tabloid. The one Carter had never raised his voice to, the one whose tears could disarm him completely. Ethan had seen the news reports back then, had seen the cold, proud man humiliated. A part of him, the part that had played the devoted companion, had ached with a strange sympathy. Now, seeing Oliver's gentle, concerned face, he just felt a sour, weary disgust. Carter finally leaned back, his attention still pinned on Ethan. He told Oliver not to mind it, it was just a bit of sport. He told Ethan to stay on his knees. Gasping, Ethan pushed himself upright, shoving Oliver's helpful hand away. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his voice rough. "Payment. 20 grand for the bottle." He looked from Oliver to Carter. Which one of them was paying? Oliver looked startled, his gaze finally landing on Ethan's face and lingering there with a dawning, uncomfortable recognition. Carter, meanwhile, just let out a low, humorless sound. He observed that 20,000 to kneel and be treated like a dog seemed a cheap price. His words were deliberate, aimed to wound. Cheap. The word landed like a slap. Fine, Ethan thought. If cheap was the complaint, he'd provide something more expensive. He snatched a fresh bottle from a nearby table, the movement swift. 2 steps, a swing fueled by 2 years of buried resentment, and the solid glass connected with Carter Thorne's temple. The crack was sickeningly loud. Bourbon and a thread of crimson traced a path down the perfect, impassive face. Ethan bared his teeth in a grin that felt unhinged. "My temper's bad too," he spat. "I've been wanting to do that for a long time." He was already turning away, the old defiance roaring back to life. He sold himself for money, so what? It was better than selling your soul for a love that wasn't there. He went back to work. A shy, wealthy young man named Asher, who smelled of autumn apples and cinnamon, was blushing over cocktails in a quieter corner of a different bar. He was murmuring about investments, about stability, about maybe looking at condos. Ethan had him gently backed against the wall, a practiced, charming smile on his lips. He was whispering that there was no rush for a condo, that they should talk about other futures first, about possibilities. He was leaning in, his voice a low, inviting murmur about family. He never finished the thought. A hand, large and unforgiving, closed on the back of his neck. He was yanked backward, his spine meeting a solid, immovable chest. A familiar, devastating scent enveloped him. Linen, gun smoke, and him. Carter's lips were at his ear, his voice a low, intimate threat. "I'd like a family too. We should discuss it. Me and you." Carter's other hand came up, fingers pressing against the sensitive skin where an omega's gland would be, where Ethan's own alpha gland lay hidden under layers of synthetic blockers and sheer will. He'd heard, Carter murmured, his breath hot, that a strong enough alpha could sometimes manage it, could conceive. His gaze lifted over Ethan's shoulder to where Asher stood frozen, his eyes holding a possessive, arrogant challenge. How many children did he want? Then Carter kissed him. It was a claiming, a punishment, all teeth and desperate, angry heat. When he pulled back, Asher was gone. Ethan shoved at his chest, fury making his hands shake. Was he being haunted? Carter's dark eyes were unreadable in the strobe lights. Liar. He pushed Ethan's hand away, pinning him to the wall. His hands slid under Ethan's shirt, palms rough against the skin of his lower back, tracing the ridges of muscle. Just lie to me, he said, the sarcasm biting. I have the funds for it. How much do you want? Ethan's mind, always calculating, threw out a number. 7 million. A faint, mocking smile touched Carter's lips. You think you're worth 7 million? Ethan caught his wandering wrists. No money, no touching. You know the rules. He knew Carter remembered every one of his sensitive spots. I can touch whatever I like after I pay? Carter asked, his voice dropping. Sure, Ethan breathed, leaning into the wall with a show of bravado. Whatever you like. The smile vanished. Carter pulled a cold, platinum card from his pocket and pushed it between Ethan's lips. His voice turned to ice. Take it off. Here? In this crowded, pulsing bar? The Carter Thorne he knew would have drawn the blinds tight, would have silenced any scandalous noise with a hand or a furious kiss, saving the real reckoning for behind closed doors. This new, exposed cruelty was a shock. Carter's breath was hot against the faux gland at his neck. He seemed to be inhaling the artificial, creamy scent layered over Ethan's own. He gave a soft, dark chuckle. So he was a creamy one. Then his mouth was there, teeth scraping the vulnerable skin, tongue laving over it. The sensation was a violent, unwelcome shock to his system, a confusing mix of violation and a deep, traitorous thrill. Carter gripped his jaw, forcing his head to the side. Look at you, he murmured, his eyes tracing Ethan's expression. Does it feel that good to be handled by an alpha? Ethan's pride fractured. Just get on with it. Carter laughed, a low, dangerous sound. One arm banded around his waist, the other hand covered his mouth. He bit his earlobe. Later, he promised, the word a threat. Don't cry. Don't call for me. I won't care. He paid a heavy price for his impatience. Later, in the sterile quiet of Carter's penthouse, he felt half dead. His neck throbbed where Carter had bitten down again and again, trying to force his conflicting, dominant pheromones into a gland that rejected them. The creamy, artificial scent and the acrid gunpowder clashed in his head, a nauseating cocktail. He lay across Carter's lap on the vast bed, limp, as the man rubbed a salve into the bruised, swollen skin with a clinical lack of tenderness. Carter brushed the hair from his neck and, without, bent and sank his teeth in once more. The invasive burn of foreign pheromones was a fresh agony. Ethan cried out, grabbing a fistful of Carter's hair to yank him away. Stop! I'm not a damn Omega! Carter licked a drop of blood from his canine tooth, his gaze unervingly calm. Of course you're not. Omegas aren't nearly this frustrating. He gently traced the angry teeth marks. Marking doesn't matter. I'll just keep filling you up. You'll smell of me. Everyone will know who you belong to. Ethan had no doubt he meant it. The man had once hung him from a set of custom-made restraints until he passed out, and hadn't stopped. He managed a weak, delirious laugh. Carter, I know a great psychiatrist. You should make an appointment. He woke alone the next morning. The $7 million card was gone from his pocket. He found Carter in his home office, bathed in the cool light of a computer screen. Carter leaned back in his chair, a silent command in his hooked finger. Ethan approached, hand out. The card. Carter laced his fingers over his knee, studying him for a long, silent moment. Say it, he said, his voice quiet. Call me husband. The word hung in the air, absurd and terrifying. Ethan's eyes flicked to the computer screen. 8 small, professional faces in video conference squares stared back, frozen in various states of shock and disbelief. A wave of cold dread washed over him. He reached out and slammed the laptop shut. Carter, he said, his voice eerily calm. You weren't on mute. For 10 full seconds, Carter did nothing. Then he lifted a hand, dragged it down his face, and dropped it. When he looked back at Ethan, his expression was reset to that same unnerving determination. He held up 2 fingers. 2 times. Ethan swallowed his pride, hooking his arms around Carter's neck. He poured every ounce of false sweetness he had left into the word. Husband. Please, husband, can I have the card? A faint, dizzy smile touched Carter's lips. He nodded toward his pants pocket. Ethan had to fish it out, his movements awkward and too intimate, feeling Carter's breath hitch under his touch. Finally, the card was in his hand. Carter calmly adjusted his posture, his voice steady. You can have it. On one condition. His eyes locked with Ethan's. Jason, stop gambling. Promise me, and I'll let you walk out that door. Okay, Ethan said easily, the lie smooth on his tongue. Promise. He didn't look back. 2 weeks later, he was back in that same rain-slicked alley, beaten bloody by casino collectors. The same leather shoes approached. Carter crouched, his expression unreadable as he lifted Ethan's battered face. How much this time? 5 million. Ethan's voice was a broken rasp. He just needed a little more. He could win it back. He was so close. He begged. He'd do anything. Why should I? Carter's voice was flat. I'll be yours. You can do whatever you want with me. Carter's grip on his chin tightened to the point of pain. His eyes, usually so cold, held a flicker of something worse. A profound, weary contempt. Is that all you are? Something to be bought and sold to anyone? He let go, the disgust clear. You really are something else, Jason. I thought losing might teach you something. I was wrong. You can't be taught. You have no core to you. No heart. The words, spoken with such quiet conviction, lanced through the numbness. Ethan felt a bizarre, sharp pain in his chest. He swallowed, the taste of blood and rain thick in his mouth. Carter, please. Help me with the debt. I won't gamble. I swear. Carter stood, looking down at him with a pity that felt like acid. I don't believe you. You're a liar. I gave you a chance. You didn't take it. He turned and walked away. The rain fell harder, a cold baptism. Ethan let his head fall back against the wet brick. He thought of the 2 years he'd spent with Carter, living a clean, narrow lie. He hadn't touched a card, hadn't wanted the man to see the grime he came from. He'd almost convinced himself that performance could be a lifetime. But he was no prince. He was the dirt under the palace steps. A man like Carter deserved the real thing, the Oliver with his gentle hands and tragic eyes, not a counterfeit Omega who was really just a desperate, broken alpha. He was so lost in the chill that he didn't notice the rain had stopped. An umbrella shielded him. Carter had returned, his hair plastered to his forehead, rain streaming down his coat. He'd thought about it, he said. If Ethan couldn't change himself, he would change him. If he couldn't quit, Carter would make him quit. He wanted to see how hard it really was. He extended a hand. Ethan looked at that hand for a long time. Then he laughed, a raw, broken sound into the crook of his arm. It wasn't hard. It was just that no one had ever said the words. In 27 years, no one had ever looked at the mess of him and said, Jason, stop. His father had only ever dealt the cards. He was so tired of walking the path alone. With the last of his strength, he slapped Carter's hand away. Get lost, you damn do-gooder. He tried to stand, to walk into the drowning rain. He didn't make it 2 steps. Carter's arms were around him, hauling him up. Ethan fought, a wild, spent animal, kicking and cursing. Carter absorbed the blows, finally landing a sharp, stinging slap on his backside that was more shock than pain. He warned that if he kept moving, he'd be tied up. Ethan went limp. It wasn't surrender. It was collapse. As he was bundled into the warm, dry car, a new, more terrifying sickness bloomed in his veins. It was a crawling, insect-like feeling, a deep chemical hunger that had nothing to do with cards or money. He scratched at his neck, drawing blood, his breaths coming in sharp, panicked gasps. He needed medicine. He begged Carter to find Leo. Leo had the medicine. Carter grabbed his frantic hands, his face very close. He studied Ethan's dilated pupils, the sweat on his brow. A slow, terrible smile spread across his features. Jason Miller, he breathed the name a curse. You are full of surprises. He gritted his teeth. You'd touch anything, wouldn't you? While Carter made a phone call, his voice lethally calm as he ordered a man named Leo found. Ethan's world dissolved into a haze of pain. He struggled, banging his head against the window. Carter pinned him, using his own belt to secure his wrists, his shirt to bind his legs. To stop him biting his tongue, Carter shoved his own forearm into his mouth. Ethan bit down, hard, the coppery taste of blood flooding his senses. Carter just grunted, his other hand cradling the back of Ethan's head. Easy, he muttered, though his voice was strained. Fine. Bite. Get it out. When consciousness returned, he was in a soft bed in a room that smelled of Carter and antiseptic. His body felt hollowed out. Carter was asleep in an armchair by the window. His sleeve rolled up to reveal a set of deep, brutal tooth marks. The memory of blood on his tongue resurfaced. Quietly, Ethan slid from the bed, pulling on his jeans. He was searching for his shirt when a tired, gravelly voice spoke from the chair. Go ahead. Run. He froze. Carter hadn't moved, but his eyes were open, fixed on him. I'll break both your legs the moment you step past that door. A full-body shiver racked Ethan. Carter tilted his chin toward the bed. If you're not running, take the jeans off and get back under the covers. Ethan did so quickly. He pulled the duvet up to his chin. His throat was desert dry. I want some water. Carter brought him a glass, his face unreadable. He drained half of it himself before handing it over. What else? Ethan's eyes tracked the movement of his throat. The aftermath of the sickness, the proximity, the raw scent of him, sparked a different, familiar hunger. I want to fuck you. Carter raised an eyebrow, a faint, incredulous smirk on his lips. You dream big. He set the glass down. Carter, Ethan said, the name a plea. He did want him. Desperately. Carter lifted the duvet and slid in beside him, pulling Ethan against his chest. He nuzzled the sore, bitten skin of his neck, his hand sliding under the thin t-shirt to rest on the flat plane of Ethan's stomach. His voice was a low rumble against his skin. Jason, if I can find it, will you carry it? The question was insanity. An alpha's reproductive anatomy was a vestigial, deeply buried thing.
Impossible, Ethan bretted.
Carter's lips brushed the sensitive gland. What if it isn't? His hand splayed possessively. Let's try. What followed was a lesson in the terrifying capability of a top-tier alpha. For a blinding, white-hot moment, Ethan was convinced Carter would succeed, that he would somehow reach the unreachable. He thrashed, his protests turning into choked pleas. The ringing of Carter's phone was a salvation. He lunged for it. Oliver's voice, soft and slightly slurred, floated through. He was at some charity gala. Could Carter please come get him? If he'd known, Ethan would have gladly welcomed the search for the elusive cavity. Carter gripped his ankle and dragged him back. He apologized to Oliver, his voice rough and distracted. He was busy. With what? Oliver's voice turned petulant. What's more important? Carter kissed the knob of Ethan's spine. Yes, he murmured the word thick. He pushed deeper, making Ethan gasp. Oliver heard it. His voice became small, wounded. He thought Carter was trying to punish him, to make him jealous. He began a familiar, guilt-laden monologue about his past mistakes, about atonement. Carter was silent for a moment, his fingers absently rubbing the bruised gland on Ethan's neck. Then he spoke, his tone thoughtful. Oliver, my partner, knows an excellent psychiatric facility. Would you like the address? The next morning, a private physician came and went. Carter stood by the window, flipping through the pages of a medical report. He looked up, his gaze sharp as a scalpel. My wife weighed 157 pounds when he left. He tossed the papers onto the bed. You weigh 102. Where did those 55 pounds go? Ethan couldn't meet his eyes. He focused on a seam in the duvet. Your wife is Ash now. Doesn't weigh anything at all, does he? Carter made a non-committal sound. The real battle was just beginning. The chemical hunger returned in vicious waves, a puppet master pulling his strings. In its grip, he was an animal, begging, raging, clawing at Carter, biting him. Carter had a custom chain made, padded with soft leather, but it still bit into Ethan's wrist, leaving angry, raw circles. One night, in a frenzy, Ethan broke free and grabbed a letter opener from the desk. He screamed, the sound tearing from his throat, and plunged it toward Carter's shoulder. "Let me go. Give it to me. I won't quit." Carter didn't flinch. The blade sank in, and instead of releasing him, he pulled Ethan into a crushing, bloody embrace. His voice was a guttural promise against his ear. "You will.